to me.
Hey disciples, and welcome to Everyday Hope.
Your daily inspiration from the Word of God.
Sorry about yesterday. We were helping Alyssa's mom move, and it ran a little later than we thought. So here we are today, though. So no problem. We can just get everything in one session. But still on the topic of raising kids to know God, raising them in the right mindset.
For the glory of God.
To the glory of God. And I like how Tony Evans titled his book, and I think it's the best way to phrase it, Raising Kingdom Kids. I like that. Mm-hmm. It's almost as good as Raising Little Disciples. I wrote to him and suggested the change, but we'll see if it takes. Tony Evans.
Anyways, this is a focus on the family book that I've been reading, gathering knowledge from.
And summarizing for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm reading a...
Because he's often offline.
I'm reading I have my own book I was already halfway through, so I can't start that until I finish my other book. But yeah, so one of the quotes I want to read to you guys is this from Tony Evans. Raising kingdom kids involves intentionally overseeing the generational transfer of the faith in such a way that children learn to consistently live a life under God's divine authority. It's good.
Yeah, so, in other words, to me, that means you want to raise them so that they constantly are seeking God, turning to God, dealing with every situation that they have to face in their life from the book, the Bible. But not only themselves, but growing up and passing it down for generations to generations.
That's what I always think, and it's something we should all think is, what legacy are you leaving behind for your kids? And not just for your kids, but for your future grandkids and great-grandkids and so on and so forth. Is what legacy are you leaving? And that's been the inspiration behind a lot of things I do. Something interesting I've done, for example, is I read a different translation of the Bible every year. I feel like different translations speak to different points of stories, and I understand things I wouldn't in others. And there's a lot of benefits from it, in my opinion, but I mark up my Bibles. I'll underline, I always have a pen when I'm reading, I'll write things, and every time I finish one of these Bibles, I address it to one of my kids. And I'll keep doing that, and then I'll eventually start addressing them to grandkids, and I'll hope that they continue to pass those Bibles down, and that they're always able to see the most important part of my life was my life with God, my time in His Word, my prayers that are written in that Bible, and that every generation is able to have a copy of that to see what was most important in my life, and to be able to see God from the love and relationship I have with Him.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I know.
Pat on the back, babe. So, Focus on the Family explains that they have 12 traits of a healthy family. And so they go through it a little bit, and you can read more about it in some of their other books too. They just touch on it a little bit here. You want me to read that?
Yeah, you can go with 12 traits.
Yeah. So the 12 traits are a strong marriage is what needs to start.
12 traits of a healthy family.
A healthy family, correct.
We can make 12 traits of an unhealthy family.
No.
Okay.
Commitment, number 2. Seeing partners having commitment with one another, but also having commitment with your children and your other family members. So passing on to your children, they're going to see how much you do for other members of your family or for your spouse, and they'll learn how they should be treated or be committed. Shared spiritual foundation, good communication, connectedness, like togetherness, a good sense of like they say, like eating at the table for dinner every night, as an example.
Without electronics, guys?
Yeah.
Communication. So that's like how I'm really good with my selective hearing, right?
Yeah.
Because I only hear the important things.
Right.
Focusing on that.
Right. honor, resiliency, and then consistent expectations and discipline, which I think is really good.
And I think as parents, it's something that even we've struggled with until we've recently revamped our discipline and our consistency with the kids.
The kids are getting older, and so punishments need to be revamped. They're just
exactly, and we want to be consistent is the biggest thing. I feel like a lot of times as parents, we'll set a punishment or an expectation and not follow through. Like, if you don't behave in school, you're going to be grounded that weekend. But then we have a birthday party to go to, so it's like, well, you're not grounded at the birthday party, but you're grounded elsewhere. And you know what? You could be grounded Friday, and then you could be off. And we lessen the punishment. We don't stay consistent and follow through with our original word. And what that does is it takes away the kids' expectations to discipline and takes away their respect for your discipline.
Mm-hmm. They can't take you seriously if you say this is your punishment and then it doesn't follow through. So then the next time you say, well, if you do this, this will be your punishment. What we noticed was like, oh well.
Your kids aren't going to honor you if you're not keeping your word. You think you're being nice and their friend, but that friendship comes at the cost of respect to your parent, fear of your parent. You want to have the same traits as how we look up to God as our kids look up to us. We cannot be lying to them. We have to be full of honor and integrity, and a big part of that is keeping our word and loving them enough to discipline them to what fits the crime. We can't hold back with that. We can't go easy on them because it's just going to handicap them for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And the next one to kind of go with that too is responsibility, holding each other accountable.
I hold her accountable every time I don't have food ready when I get home. Kidding, guys. I cook a lot, actually. I'm really good at mac and cheese. No, I do like to cook. I have a couple meals I'm good at. I'm trying to expand though. It's actually been on my list to take a cooking class, but I'll do that when Calum's 18 probably.
Oh my goodness. Time to eat years of the same foods.
I'm really good at my 10 meals.
So the 10th one is healthy individuals, and what they meant by that is that you need to be healthy yourself in order to teach your children good habits and good behaviors. Community-minded, which is really good, and social skills.
With healthy individuals, I always think back to how many friends I had growing up, and I think a lot of us do this. I know I've done this, and we. In the Bible, God says in the Old Testament, I always had trouble with this the first time I read it, he says, I'm going to punish the son for the father's sin, and his son to the fourth and fifth generation. And what God's really talking about is how our sin carries on the generation. So living as a healthy individual is breaking those chains of bad habits in your family to set a good example for your children. So if I don't ever let my kids... because, for example, I haven't always been saved, and I used to be a smoker. I used to smoke cigarettes, and I'd have the occasional drink, and I don't think that sets a healthy expectation for my kids for them to see me do that. So I always try to shield them, and I quit when they were still really young, my oldest, and I think those things set a bad expectations, and our kids think, and I hear this from all my friends growing up, well, my dad drinks, so it's okay to drink, or my mom smokes, so it's not a big deal, and you see that just carry down the line.
Or a lot of times, the way young kids even have their first drink is stealing it from their parents' liquor cabinet.
Yep. And it gets worse from there, I know so many people who I know going over to their house and stuff, I see their parents fight. I have one or two friends where, if you've ever been in that situation, you're at their house and you feel uncomfortable because their parents are fighting, and maybe even the father puts hands on the mom, or just the way they're screaming and cursing each other, and then you start seeing that person develop the same habits in their relationship when they get older, and it's just those unhealthy boundaries. It's not right to fight in front of the kids like that. It's not right to fight like that in a relationship at all, but especially to that example in front of the kids. I don't think it's wrong for the kids to see me and her resolve a conflict as long as we're doing it in a healthy manner.
Right.
I think it's good to set conflict resolution. You have to set that for your kids. It goes to everything. And, as a parent, I never believe it. And the more kids I've had, the more I see how true it is. They literally notice and pick up on everything. You think that they're young and they won't notice or grow out of it, or this is an irrelevant moment, but they really latch onto those things. Even once or twice, it doesn't leave their minds.
Before we go on, I want to say real quick, what I like a lot about this book is that it's for anyone, no matter where you are in your family or in your spiritual walk, whether you're just starting to go to church or coming to know God as a family, or you've been going to church for a long time. The way he sets up the book is really cool too. So the first 5 chapters he calls part 1, which is establishing a kingdom mindset. Part 2 is cultivating a kingdom atmosphere. And then part 3, instilling kingdom virtues. So it's pretty cool. And then, like we talked about earlier this week, some things that you could do for the atmosphere or as a parent. So you just tune in, well, I guess it was last week. Tune into the videos last week to get some ideas. But the first responsibility in parenting Will is that you yourself are growing and developing as a healthy individual, as we kind of touched on already, both spiritually, physically, mentally, and socially. And I think that should go both in words and in actions.
It definitely should. It's one thing to tell your kids to pray, or it's like, we just talked about those typical situations where if a parent smokes and you tell your child, don't smoke when you grow up, it's just like, you're not going to take them seriously. So it's about not just saying, but doing. You want your kids to see the positive example. I don't want to tell my kids to pray. I want to pray with them.
Right.
Tell me what you heard on the radio.
Yeah,
really
that's
cool.
great too. So this comedian was on the radio yesterday, and she had said something I really liked, is that, as a mom raising young kids, it's easy to get frustrated or stressed out, and then you end up taking it out on your kids. And she was realizing that maybe, her kid, the example she gave was her son saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom, Mom," and she was like, I never said what on the first time, but on the 1000th Mom, I would just let go and just say, "What?" And so she was like, I decided I was lashing out on them, and it's not necessarily their fault. And so what she decided to do is, before punishing them, she would pray with them. And they held hands together, and she prayed out loud and asked her kids to chime in and pray too. And then she wouldn't make a decision on what the punishment should be until after she prayed and talked to God.
I think that's really good to set that with the kids. Like, I'm frustrated, you're in trouble, let's pray to God to get this issue resolved and go from there.
Yeah.
It's just a great way of setting that. We go to God first. He comes before
Trust
me.
him.
He comes before you. He comes before any other obligation.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. So I think it's about not only saying to pray, praying with your kids, not only telling them to read their Bibles, but to read with them, or to let them see that you do these things in your spare time as well. We can't be all talk. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
It's so easy as parents to just let the world become a distraction, and there'll always be distractions. For some parents, our kids are our distractions. This sporting event, now we gotta go to gymnastics, now we gotta go to soccer practice, baseball practice, now we got games this weekend. And we let that control our lives, and let that take all of our time, instead of giving God the first. We give Him whatever's left after all that. Not that those things are inherently bad, by all means. Your kids are active, let them be, but make sure that that's not taking priority over time with God. And that goes with everything in the world. It's so easy for us as men to get caught up in our careers, and women out there just get caught up in our work, and we're working long hours, we're doing it to provide for our family, do the best we can, and it's tiring. I know it's tiring, but we can't come home and have no time and energy left for God and then for our family because of work. That's not how God intended it for it to be. He wanted us to work diligently, work hard most of the day, and then for our time at home to tend to our children, to raise them up as disciples, to care for our wives as Jesus cared for the church, and then to go to bed tired and do it all over again. Socialize is another big thing.
Yeah.
Socialize is one of those things that it seems like you either struggle with it or you don't. There's two personalities out there. You're either recluse to begin with and you rarely have a social life, or you're somebody who really likes going out and there's no problem with that until it starts to take away time from God and your family. So you really just got to take everything with small doses, and more so than that, you have to make sure God gets the first, not the leftovers. Something I read is God doesn't just want custody on the weekends. That's not his role in your life, is just to be an hour on Sundays of supervised visitation with your pastor. If you look at like a parenting plan, that's not how it's supposed to be. He wants full custody. He wants the first and the most from us, not just the leftovers. So when your kids get home from school, man, if that's a good time for you, do it then. That's the only time you have. And I'm sure I'm going to get some backlash for this, but if it came down to I had so little time that day that it came down to my kids' homework or my kids reading their devotional and doing a Bible study, we're not doing homework that day. It has to be first and most.
And I think too, to put it in other words, you can't just rely on the church to teach your children. It's our job as parents to teach our children as well. They're only getting an hour a week there, and it's usually, like what you said, a coloring activity or a song and dance.
Yeah, we joke about it today, just from the mindset of, we send our kids to school, and if you're like us, we don't have a lot of money. Our kids go to public school. We can't afford private school. We could do homeschooling, I guess, but I don't know if that's necessarily for the social success they need. And so there's a lot of conflict there, and I'm not going to say I'm one side or the other, but the thing is, they go to school all week, right? And 99% of what they learn in school is this secular worldview of evolution and Big Bang and scientific, mathematical ways of thinking, and I'm all for that, as long as it's superseded by God. But they don't get filled with that at school. They get filled with the other 99%. And they're influenced by their friends and all those other things. And we have our short amount of time with them at home. And if we don't take advantage of that, and we rely on the church to do it, to do the job of raising our kids spiritually because they're there 1 hour a week, what do you expect them to do? They do 20 minutes of song and dance, 10 minutes of transition, and then for 20 minutes they color a picture of Noah's Ark, and we think that that's going to spiritually set a foundation for them. It's not. You can't rely on the church for that. Coloring a picture does not a disciple make.
No. So just make sure you're doing your job as parents to be intentional of teaching them about God, to turn to God, to pray, and everything like that. And I think that the best way to inspire them is for them to see you doing it, or for you to be doing it with them. I think too, as our kids are getting older and gonna be going into middle school or high school, or if you have kids like that too, you have to stay involved in their lives, because they're gonna be in public school, they're gonna be exposed to all different views out there, different friends and families, and one thing I told him that I believe, I'll rather always come home to a messy house and no food because all of our kids have their friends over, because then at least I know that we can keep an eye on them, we can hear what their friends are saying, and we have Bible verses hanging up around their house, we can set up a good influence for their friends.
Yeah.
And if
we have Bible verses, we have pictures of Jesus everywhere and Bibles laying out in every corner.
And you just want to make sure that they're friends with the right people, that they're being influenced by the right peers, and you don't want them getting on a bad track.
And so the last two things I want to say, I'll make these short for you guys because it's been a long video. We had makeup for yesterday. Another Another big influence in our kids' lives are going to be grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even siblings. And just make sure that, especially anybody watching the kid or spending a lot of time with them, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, that you set the same foundation. One of the most important things I read and know about raising kids is to make sure that the discipline doesn't change from mom to dad, from aunt to uncle, or to grandma. We don't want to curl them or cuddle them. We want to stay firm with our discipline with them, and of course reward their good behavior as well. And we want to make sure we allow everybody to be a part of being able to reward the child when in their victories, but we also want to make sure that they're all doing their part in disciplining the child when they fall short. So make sure that you hold them to that expectation. Don't be mean about it. If grandma's struggling because they always want spoiled, just pull mom aside and say, hey, I know you love Nikki a lot, but we just need to make sure that you're following through on the discipline side, and it's not all fun and games with you, because then she sees going over to you as an excuse to not follow the rules. You just have to make sure you set that foundation up with them. And be firm as a parent. Don't be afraid or shy, because once you had that kid, you took on the responsibility as a parent, and so you have the right as a parent, and God gave you the responsibility to choose how they're raised, and that includes with grandparents as well. The last thing, and this is like my real awakening through reading my Bible and praying recently, is I made it known to my kids that I cannot be your friend. And I know I want to be, and I love to be, and I have so much fun doing that, but first and foremost, I have the responsibility as a father. And I felt like being their friend gets in the way of being their parent first. And I'm not saying don't have fun with your kids, don't play with them, no wrestling, no playing video games, no playing dress up with the girls or letting them paint your nails. Yeah, I've done that. I'm not saying don't do those things, but you can't let those things supersede the discipline, the teaching, the discipling of your children. You have to be a parent first and foremost, and never let a friendship with your children take away from your parenting of your children. It's only hurting them. So I resolved to not be their friend, but to be their father first and foremost. And I hope that's a big takeaway for you guys, along with everything we talked about. So what do we want to do? We want to raise kingdom kids, or like Tony Evans is going to change the title to Raising Little Disciples. And we want to remember those 12 traits that you can look and get from the book as well, and make sure that we're living intentionally for our children to leave behind a legacy.
Woo!
Thanks for joining us as always, guys, for Everyday Hope. Join us next week. We'll have a whole new topic for you guys. Get to church tomorrow if you didn't tonight. Very important. And again, thanks for tuning in, and remember, never lose hope.
You don't know what tomorrow may bring.
See you guys Monday.